Loaner drivers are to be allowed on motorways for the first time under new government plans to improve road safety. The Department of Transport is launching a 7 week consultation on the proposed changes from today. It says the idea is designed to improve awareness and experience for new road users. Sankita Maiska reports.
The proposed changes to both driver and motorcyclist training, says the government, would improve safety on Britain's roads. For drivers, changes would mean that competent learners would be able to have lessons on motorways with an approved driving instructor in a dual-controlled car. The biggest proposed changes are reserved for motorcyclists. The compulsory basic training course, which allows them to ride unaccompanied on roads, would be updated. Motorcycle training would also move more online, with novice riders having to take a theory test. And those holding a provisional motorcycle licence would also have their CBT certificates revoked if they get more than 6 penalty points. The motoring organisation, the RAC, have welcomed the proposals, saying Britain's roads are already amongst the safest in the world and that changes are needed to help modernise driver and motorcycle training. Sangeeta Maiska, BBC News.
And with me now is Chris Bensted, a driving instructor who's a member of the Driving Instructors Association. Chris, thank you very much for coming along. And I understand that you think this is a good idea.
Definitely. I think any tool that we can have where we can give people more experience, that's got to be a good thing. The test is a minimum standards test, and the experience is the key to being safer on the road. We teach people for risk assessment and how to self-evaluate. So being able to give them that experience and give them the extra tools and things to work with has got to be a good thing.
Because I'm imagining that the average driving lesson, certainly I remember when I was learning to drive, it was travelling around relatively minor roads and, getting nowhere near the sort of speeds that you might experience on the motorway. So expecting newly qualified drivers to drive on the motorway without any practice, it's really like throwing them in at the deep end, isn't it?
And that's what people are doing at the moment. They're going in with no specific motorway training. If you're lucky, and I'm in an area that's got one, there's good dual carriageway networks, and we can make use of those. But there's no real motorways being used. So driving instruction's changing. And we're now much more about self-development and self-assessment. So there's more mix of roads being used, but that's not necessarily similar to motorways.
You may not know the stats on this, but is there any evidence that newly qualified drivers are more likely to have accidents on motorways?
There's evidence that they're more likely to have accidents. There's about 8% of licence holders having about 25% of the accidents. So it's about 1 in 5 newly qualified drivers in the first 6 months. So motorways are actually our safest roads. The big benefit is if we can get them confidently using motorways, then we can get them off of the other roads onto safer road networks. So there's a real balance of benefits.
Do you have any idea at this stage how these proposals would work? Because as I understand it, it wouldn't necessarily be compulsory that a learner driver would have to do part of their training on motorways.
There's logistical issues because a lot of the country doesn't have motorways, and you'd be looking at a 6-hour lesson to be able to do so with a learner driver from certain areas of the country. It's not expected to go onto tests either because of that same issue. You can't keep the balance and fairness across all of the tests, but it's something that people can go and do. Driving instructors already offer it for post-test, but very few people take us up on it.
Yeah, you'd like to see some sort of graduated licensing or ongoing training, wouldn't you?
Yeah, forward-focused, rather than looking at the driving test, look as being the final goalposts, looking across the years of how people can develop things. And we take out a lot of full licence holders and do development with them. It would be nice if there were some more.
Obviously, that's good business for driving instructors, but I'm sure lots of people can see the sense in that in terms of improving safety, hopefully. In terms of having a target number of hours for driving practice before a test is taken, there's a suggestion that it should be 120 hours. How does that compare to the typical amount of time that people, in your experience, spend learning to drive before they take their test?
The difference with the 120 hours is it's levels of experience rather than necessarily driving lessons. And I'd rather someone had fewer hours with me and maximise their experience than they necessarily tried to work towards maximise the hours with the driving instructor. So the 120 hour figure is based on stats that show that people are safer once they've got higher levels of experience, giving us something like Motorways to work towards. Getting people to a confident and safe level to be able to use those motorways gives us more to work with to get those hours under their belt before they've taken past their tests.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much. Chris Bensted, a member of the Driving Instructors Association. Thanks again. Now, the latest files to be released by the